So, welcome back to the summit, everyone. If you're anything like me, you are having such a good time learning so much from these awesome speakers who are willing to share their secrets with you. That's what I really love about this summit. These speakers are not holding anything back, they are helping you get organized, get efficient and effective, get more leads, and ultimately book more work. So our next speaker is no exception. We have Matt Ward. He is the CEO of Breakthrough Champion. And he also has another company. In fact, he has a number of companies, but his other company is My Speaker Leads. And he's going to be helping us understand how, as a solopreneur, a micro business owner, we can use speaking to help grow our business. Matt, welcome to the summit.
Thank you, Angela. I am honored to be here, and I'm really pleased to be able to provide some ideas, some hacks maybe for our solopreneurs on how they can kind of get more business in their small practices.
Okay. Now, I always start by asking people, how did their journey start? So your 2-minute version,
Sure.
because you've been doing this for a while.
Yeah, so I've been speaking now for 20 years, but really in a quick nutshell, I ran a digital marketing agency that I started from the ground up. I'm the youngest of 3 boys, the first to graduate high school, and the only one not to go to prison. So something along the way changed my life. I got fixed and focused, and I was coaching youth football, and a parent walked up on the field one day and said, "Why don't you start a web design company?" And I said, "Erica, get off the field. Parents are not allowed on the field." And then I actually said, no. What do I know about that? And she said, "Well, you built our nonprofit website." And I said, aha. Actually, what happened was I had a friend, a coworker at a full-time job that said she would build it because she knew what she was doing. And I realized immediately that I could outsource this. So that was effectively how I went into business. So this was back in 2002. I started part-time, and in 2005 turned it full-time. Eventually I ended up hiring 8 to 10 employees over the course of the 16 years I owned it. And in 2018, I sold it for over 7 figures to one of my staff members. In that time, I realized that I was alone, that sales was really the only thing. I mean, as much as we want to do the work that we were actually meant or felt like we were meant to do, that this business was not a web design business. It was not a digital marketing business. It was a sales business. And every business that we're in is ultimately a sales business, because if we're not selling something, we're not bringing in revenue. And at the end of the day, I hated sales. I loved relationships, but I hated sales. So I figured out, okay, how can I get more referrals? So now, fast forward, the day I sold my company, June 1st, 2018, the next day I became a full-time professional speaker talking solely about how to get more referrals in your business. And when I started that journey in 2018, I had no speaking leads, no opportunities, nothing. And I'm like, oh, this isn't a speaking business. This is a sales business. And I'm like, duh. Like, I knew that from the web business, but I just thought, oh, leads are going to rain down from the sky. Every conference is going to want to bring me on and have me talk. And that's not the case. Furthermore, when you start a business, referrals take a long time to come, right? And in the 16 years I owned that agency, the last 4 years, all new business came from only referral. But the first 12 years, we had to do marketing, advertising, networking, things like that. And so I realized I needed to get out there and let people know that I existed, which is completely against my nature. And it's very hard sometimes for me to step out of the box and actually put on my sales hat, my marketing hat, and let people know that I existed. And so in that process, I developed this high-touch, non-automated reach-out process to get more speaking opportunities. And it was as basic as emailing people and saying, hey, this is what I talk about. I'm interested in speaking at your conference. I think it's a good fit. Would you like to have a conversation? And there were a lot of no's. But behind every 25 no's was a yes. And in 2019, I spoke 27 times already by the time we're recording this. 27 times. Not all of them were paid speaking opportunities. Some of them were free ones, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you offer services, you might want to speak for to garner business because you're the expert in the front of the room and people will hire you. And that's the thing you have to figure out is if you don't want to pick up the phone and do cold calls, then how are you going to get more business?
Right.
And so go out and speak at all your local chamber events, speak at your Rotary events, speak at all these different places and speak for free. So there's people that get paid to speak. And then there's people that speak to get paid. And speaking to get paid can be incredibly lucrative, especially if you have, high-end coaching packages or high-end services on the backside that you sell something for $1,000 a month retainer.
Right.
How many of those do you really need to make a really good living? 20, 30?
Yeah, that's good. I like that, speak to sell, sell to speak. I like that kind of flipping it on its head and taking a look at it. But what you have said is like critically important because you've talked about, being in a different type of business and being able to leverage speaking to grow your business. Say a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so we can talk about all types of different businesses. When I was in the web design world, the digital marketing agency, I partnered with Constant Contact Email Marketing. A lot of people know who they are. And I was their number 3 partner in the country. That was ranked based on a number of different things, but basically I would speak for free at chamber events. Constant Contact would pay us a small stipend. Basically, it was like $5 a head of people in the room. But our goal was to get people to join their email marketing software service, and we would get a commission for that, right? So it's like any business when you do an affiliate thing or you resell a product. So our commission was like, I don't know, 20, 30, 40%, depending on our levels. And so I'd be getting a check every single month for over $2,000 from Constant Contact for doing nothing that month. These are people that signed up for the service, and I would just get my commission check. And so everybody wanted to learn how to do email marketing. So I didn't go in and try and sell this. I simply taught how to build great emails through email marketing, how to do it the proper way. And when people saw that, they would buy their product, and all I would do is just give them my link to buy it. And then, and so I became an expert, and ultimately people would start to ask us to actually do their email marketing for them, which is what they call service layering, where you not only sell the product and get a commission, but you now provide the service. And so if you're an accountant, QuickBooks Online might have a referral partner program that you can be getting paid every month when you refer people over there. And when QuickBooks bills the client, you get a small percentage of that. Every industry is different. And you have to be very clear when you're doing these affiliate agreements, because the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, got really tight on a lot of these people because they were not disclosing that they were getting compensation. So you see like a lot of the travel blogs will have clear disclosures that they get payment. They may get payment if you get a credit card through their link, type of thing. And so it's just a matter of getting your expertise out there and just giving and giving and giving and giving and being completely, not focused on you and focused on them. And when people see that, you're now the expert. You're the only expert, and you're the local expert. You're the person they know. And so when I go around the country and I speak about referrals, people come up to me afterwards and like, I'm really struggling. Can you help me? And I'm like, sure, I do referral consulting, and I don't do a lot of it. And I'm very clear that I'm very picky on who I take. And I only work with 5 clients at a time on the referral consulting side. But I tell them, the first thing is I tell them, go check out my YouTube, because I do a weekly video there. And what I'm looking for is I'm looking to create thought leadership within their mind. Can they work with somebody? Do they like the person? It's the know, like, and trust factor, right? And so are we covering all of that before I attempt to try and sell them on a service,
Mhm.
right? Because if I try to sell them on a service first, now it's sales, right? And I want their business more than they want mine. But if they consume all of my information, they show up to my events, they show up to my speaking things, my little boot camps that I might do and things like that. Now I'm the thought leader. When they approach me, they want my service more than I want theirs. And that's when the game changes. And now you can charge anything you want within reason. That's a respectable price because you're in demand
Right.
and you're not showing the consumer that you really need their business. Right. And so if you're speaking in a crowd and I think that generally speaking, you can get a 10 to 20% opt-in rate, right? So in a crowd of 50 people, you're going to get 5 to 10 people to give you their business card or to sign up for some sort of free download that you might have at your speaking event. And from there, it's about nurturing that relationship over time because that list will convert at a 5% rate too. So once you get 100 people on your list, now maybe 5 will buy from you, right? So it's a numbers game.
So speaking of numbers, for businesses to really kind of become proficient at this sort of sales through speaking opportunities, do they have to be on the road all of the time? Because I'm thinking that some of these solopreneurs will say, if I'm out speaking all the time, how do I get the work done?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, so I would say yes and no. It depends on what you want, right? So for me, I prefer to get paid to speak, which means I'm on the road a lot. That's my business. And so I'm not spending a lot of time behind the computer. I'm doing more things like this and podcast interviews and writing a guest blog posts and articles for magazines and stuff like that. It's sort of thought leadership stuff. But if you're in the business of providing a service to somebody, then you're not on the road a lot. So for instance, the 16 years I had the digital marketing agency, for about probably 10 of those years, I was doing a lot of speaking, but it was all local. It was literally like all the chambers, all the Rotary groups, all the local things that were happening. I did some social media summits that were in the Boston area, which is where I'm located. And I got pretty well known. I was speaking at Business Journal events and Better Business Bureau and SBDC. These are all places, and many of them don't pay you to speak,
Right.
but you're getting your face in front of people. So you don't have to be on the road. And many times it's like, you're speaking for like a half hour or an hour in the morning before 9 o'clock. And so you can still do the rest of your day.
So what about some of the folks watching may actually want to get paid for delivering their speeches? And I know that, they probably won't get paid every time, but how do they determine when it's time to ask for a fee? And then how do they ask for a fee?
Yeah. So I think you have to ask. So let's step back a second. So I created my speaker leads because what I found was that people did not want to do the research necessary to find events all over the country to speak at. Right. And because the time it takes to actually source an event is incredible. So I have a team of 12 behind the scenes that actually are people, and they're doing this stuff and they're finding these events and they put them in a database and then they go out to the customers every Monday. And the next step is that the person receiving those leads has to actually send out the emails. They have to look at the leads and say, okay, I want to speak at this one or that one or another one. And there are some people that only want to speak regionally. So there's a little bit more research that they have to do. So once you put it out there, many of these events will not want to pay you. And the reason is they're on very tight budgets. Most of the time when they want to pay somebody, they're paying over $10,000 for a keynote speaker, and they go to a speaking bureau to get that person, or they come by referral. So in order to get those big fees, you often need to enter at the very bottom and work up the ladder over the course of a series of years, right? In my case, I'll give you a perfect example. there was an opportunity that was on the list, and I used the list myself, even though my team, even though it's my company. And when the list comes out on Monday, I look at the list, and that's what I use to go after the leads. And there was an opportunity on there called a call for speakers. And so a call for speakers is a form that you fill out. And oftentimes when a call for speakers exists, they're offering you a breakout session, right? And it's your job to define what that session will be. And they're not really offering it to you, but they're trying to bring in all of these solicitations of breakout sessions. And the reason they don't pay speakers is because they want industry specific content, right? So if we're talking about an in-person gig conference, it might be, how to handle, how to do accounting properly or withhold your taxes for your solopreneur business. And so what they ideally are looking to do is attract an individual who knows that content, who can get a free pass to attend the conference. And that's the compensation. And so I submitted my information. They sent me a contract that said you were selected, no fee, no travel fee. And oh, by the way, we'll give you a discount on the code to get in. And I'm like, no, that doesn't work in my model. Now, if that works in your model, that's great because you were going to go anyway. Now you get 50% off. That's a win-win for you, right? But for me, it didn't work. So I went back to him and I said, let's have a conversation. So I moved it to the phone. And the minute I moved it to the phone, I got on the phone. I said, listen, I built value, right? I said, this is what I do for a living. This is how I pay my bills. And, a lot of the speakers that you have are people that have hired me or referred me for other events in this industry. And they came back and they said, okay, we'll pay you over $2,000. We'll pay you over $2,000 to do a breakout and you pay your travel. Or we'll put forth your name for the closing keynote session. And if that's up to the committee. And the closing keynote would have been at full fee, which is much higher. And I said, well, how about this? I'll take the breakout and you put my name forth for the closing keynote. And if I get it, I'll do your breakout inclusive in my fee. And they said, okay, we'll pass along your information. Pass along my information, comes back. I got the closing keynote to 1,800 people, full fee. And then I did their breakout session inclusive. And so it's all because I asked, right? I could have easily said no. And so the thing I tell people is when you have an opportunity presented to you that's a free speaking opportunity, you look at what the costs are going to be and what the benefits are. How many people are going to be there? How many people are going to show up in your breakout? I would highly recommend that people not take free speaking opportunities at expos. And I've learned my lesson. Believe me, I've done enough of them. Free at expos. Expos are trade shows. They're not conferences. And so people show up to conferences to learn. People show up to expos to walk the trade show floor. They never show up into the actual session. I've literally flown to New Orleans on my own dime to do 2 breakout sessions. The first one, 6 people were in it. The second one, 8 people were in it. It was a total bust. And then I did another one in Atlanta, and 13 people were in that one. And so if you're going to do something for free and at your expense, you need to make sure that, there's 50 or 100 people in there, that you have a number in mind to build your list, right? Because if I'm going to get 10% of 13 people to opt in my email, that's not worth anything.
Right.
Right. And we all make mistakes. We all, this is part of being a solopreneur. It's just the constant struggle of, what's a good fit and what's not a good fit. And, I'll save all your viewers and listeners the trouble. Don't do breakouts at expos if they don't pay you and they don't pay your expenses, because I've done it and it's been a total failure. Make sure you at least get, push back on them for the travel expenses.
So what you're actually doing is giving the viewers some very tactical approaches to, if you do it free, see if they'll pay your travel, find out what the value could potentially be for whatever you're going to sell to them, the product or service that you have. Now, what about people? I see this all the time. You go to certain types of conferences, not all of them, where they're actually selling their services or product or whatever from the stage.
Yeah.
What
I'm
is that
completely against that,
situation
Angela.
about?
There's a couple of reasons why, but so that model works in some environments. Um, a lot of times, if you go to a conference and you enter a sponsored session, that sponsor paid to be there. They paid for that room, they paid to provide the value, and they have the right to sell. Any other time, you are often signing an agreement that says you will not sell because conference attendees don't want to be sold to. And so even if you don't sign that agreement, if you take the approach that you're going to stand on that stage and sell, I think that's a mistake. And I think you push away more people than you actually bring in. It doesn't mean you won't make a sale. But oftentimes, if you go into it with the right approach, which is I want to build my list because the long-term effect of my email marketing is so people are going to buy from your email, right? And I'll give you a perfect example, Angela, is that I'm so bad at asking for the sale because all my content is around caring about people in which they refer you naturally, right? And so I'm all about never asking for a referral. And I'm also really never about asking for the sale. And so I struggle with that. And so a lot of times I don't even do good email marketing pieces where I ask for the sale. But literally last night, I sent out an email. The night before we recorded this, I sent out an email to a list that I have for my speaker leads. And I got 3 signups. 3 signups for the service because I told them that they're missing out. Right. And so FOMO is a big thing in the world of sales. And if you sell based on the fear of missing out, FOMO, then people will buy. And so, I think you have to look at what your product is and who you are as a person to drive that. I've been in rooms where the sales pitches started and people have gotten up and walked out. They just don't want to be sold to. And if you're doing that, then you probably won't be invited back to that event, and you will have a hard time getting a referral from that organizer to speak at another event. Now, there are events that are specifically built this way. And many of the people going in know that that's the case, but there are very, 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 and I'm talking like very few. I'm talking like maybe a dozen, maybe 50 a year that are specifically built like that. Most of the time, you sign a contract that's very explicit. You can't have logos in your presentations. You can't have your own logo in your presentation. You can't have a sales pitch of any kind. And many times they want to approve the opt-in that you're offering because they just want to make sure that people aren't being sold to. I would just say care about the people in the audience in a very valuable way. Give them a lot of great content, and eventually they will buy from you.
But I mean, even if in your presentation you have some kind of free offer,
yep,
you have to say something about the free offer. So isn't it kind of like a soft sell?
It is. And there's nothing wrong with the opt-in for the slides, right? Or the download for the slides. So I believe in not giving the deck, but giving the doc. And so the deck is something that almost everybody wants. But when you see me speak, I have no bullet points on my slides. They're all images. And they don't mean anything to the audience unless they've heard me speak about that image. So I prefer to give a document that outlines the key points. And so a lot of speakers will say, text to join, right? And things like that. I do a different thing. I do this thing called a caring assessment, which is a self-assessment of how you care about other people. And it provides you a score. In order to get the score, you got to do your email. When you provide your email, you're opting in, and you can certainly opt out. So for me, I don't even talk about what I get out of it or what you're actually signing up for my weekly newsletter and all of that stuff. I just talk about how you want this score to better yourself. And so they opt in. And I get a number of opt-outs the following day, and that's okay. I'm okay with that. The one thing people need to realize is that when you're speaking, the number one goal should be to deliver a great informative speech so that you get referrals. The second goal is to get people on your email list, because that's a long-term relationship in which people will buy and refer you. The third goal is to ensure that the people on your list are clean and they like the content that you're providing. And so when an individual opts out of your email list, it's okay. It just means they get too much email. It's not personal. It actually cleans your list.
Yeah, I know. I am one of those people who is guilty of that. I'll opt in for something that I want, and then I will immediately opt out, because it's not personal, but it's just that I get so much, I would call
Stuff.
it, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and I just can't handle it. So I just said, I'm done with this, even though I know they might actually be providing some really good value.
And
So
eventually, Angela, you'll circle back around to that person with the value. They'll show up in other ways. You'll have like their Facebook page or see their YouTube videos or connect on LinkedIn or anything like that. That's another thing I should encourage people to do, is that when you speak, you want to make sure you're connecting with as many people on LinkedIn, because if they're not opting into your email, or if they opt out of your email, you're at least connected to them on LinkedIn. And now they see your content that you're posting over there. They can always circle back around if they're connected on LinkedIn with you. And they're much more likely to connect on LinkedIn than they are to do anything on Facebook or email or otherwise. And so that's what you want to move to, that as quickly as possible. And you can do that by connecting on your phone right there in person with people. And so that's very effective. But, just getting up in front of people, no matter how big the audience. Listen, I did an event at a chamber one time and one person showed up. It was a lunch and learn. I didn't even do the talk. I sat down with the person at lunch, and we sat over lunch and we talked about what they wanted to talk about, marketing in their business. You never walk away from an event. You always show up regardless of the situation. And the more you do that, the more people respect you as a speaker and a thought leader in the industry that you're speaking about. And that produces more business.
mhm. And I could see like coaches, consultants, and even like freelancers. And I think of freelancers of people who actually do the work, and consultants more strategic, and coaches more guiding. But
Mhm.
all three of those types of individuals can benefit, I really do believe, by speaking and building leads and all of that for their business. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, and when you think about a professional speaker, people that are in the association, National Association of National Speakers Association, there's a lot of coaches and consultants in that organization, and it's because when they speak on thought leadership, and then people approach them and say, "Can you do coaching and consulting?" And a lot of it is around leadership. A lot of it is around marketing, and the things that people and small business owners struggle with are a, a lot of what is getting talked about on stages. And when you're the person that gets up on that stage, people respect that, right? And so it's about building the value for the audience and ensuring that you're serving them, not yourself. And when you're doing that, they approach you afterwards. And then it's about managing the line, right? So the managing the line is all about the number of people that walk up to give you their card at the end of the talk.
Mhm.
And so there's always someone waiting to say, "Oh, I was there in that, at that location that you talked about in that story," or "Yeah, I grew up there too," or I was in that same place. And so the bonds that you create with those people turn into relationships online. And coaching and consulting is a big piece. Even the freelancers, there are freelancers that I've met at conferences where they were in audiences or they were the thought leaders on stage,
Mhm.
and they get a ton of business because they get up there and they talk. One guy I know got up there and talked about Google Analytics for vacation rentals. And he was at a vacation rental conference, right? Now, what person in the audience doesn't want more traffic to their vacation rental website?
Right.
Like everybody does, right? And so they see this guy on stage and they're like, that guy is the smarty pants in the room. I gotta connect with that guy some way, even if I don't do business with him. I got to follow him on Twitter. I got to get on Facebook. I got to connect with him on LinkedIn. And so over the course of a year or 18 months, they start seeing everything he puts out. And then they realize, wow, he's the real deal. You know what? I'm struggling with this. I'll hire him.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
You know, and so that's a big part of it, you know, is understanding what it is you can talk about and bring value to that people in the audience are struggling with.
So when I think about who is actually watching our conversation, I'm thinking about the diversity of this potential group. You know, it can be, you know, life coaches, career coaches, program developers, Google Analytics professionals, website builders, all over the map.
Mm-hmm.
What are some tips you can give the audience about how do they find these speaking opportunities to build their businesses?
Right. So the first thing is Google it, right? So first on, look at what you do, who you are. What is your specialty? Write down those three things. So I'm a Google Analytics person. I talk about website conversion, and I talk about social media, right? And so you write those things down. Or I'm a leadership coach, and I talk about having difficult conversations, or I talk about diversity in the workplace, or I talk about ethics and financial planning, right? And so now that I've written those down, now I go to Google and I type those search terms in with the word conference. And I start to find everything I possibly can, right? It's going to take you some time, a lot of time, right? Because it's probably going to take, so for our team to source a single event takes about 20 minutes. Right. And that's people that do it every single day. And they're looking for a lot of information, phone numbers, contact information, emails, you know, websites, call for speaker links. They're looking for all of that stuff. And so you could spend 45 minutes to an hour just finding one conference and all that data. Mm-hmm. But it's free and you don't have to spend any money or hire anyone to do it. On the contrary, if you want to eliminate that time, but also get a lot of stuff. So our list sends out a mixture of things. It's anything from tech conferences to HR conferences to association events of all types. I mean, I've spoken for the Northeast Precast Concrete Association, right? I mean, there's an association for everything, Angela. And right. So, you know, our lists have those things on it. If you want to be a specialist, like the guy who was talking about Google Analytics and vacation rentals, that's all he goes to. He knows every single vacation rental conference that exists, and he goes to it because he has his target market defined. If you are a web developer solely focused on accounting, then you want to focus on accounting conferences and associations and CPA societies and things like that. And those are the things you're going to put into Google Analytics or to Google and search for. And you have to consistently do this like every day, every week, if you want to start sourcing events. Because here's the thing, the hit rate is low. It's a volume game because they have a lot of people who can submit and who are willing to speak for free in some cases. So you have to play the volume game and you have to send out a good amount of emails. It's probably 40 emails for every one hit, maybe. And, you know, if you're willing to put the process in place and do that, then you can be very effective at this. The thing I tell people is put out as many as possible, get selected. And at the point at which you're selected, you can then choose to go or not go, like accept or decline. Mm-hmm. You don't have to accept everything that you've been accepted for by them because there's a lot of reasons why you wouldn't accept. For instance, if the terms of the deal weren't right? If the audience, after the fact, you found out that the audience isn't right. Maybe you thought it was an accounting audience and it turns out it's a financial, you know, auditing audience, which is much different than what you thought it was. You might say no to that. Or you might say no because you have a date conflict. You got picked for a different one and you chose to accept that. So there's a lot of reasons why you might opt out. And organizers aren't going to hold that against you because they know that it took them 4 months to pick somebody. And in that time, a lot can change. For instance, I don't know, you might be having a baby that month, right? As your family, right? You might, right? Like a lot can happen in 4 to 6 months. And so you send out a lot of information, and then when the stuff comes back in, you choose what you want, and then you fight for what you want. Like in the case where I talked about how I didn't want to do the free event, and I turned it into a paid breakout, and then turned it into a paid keynote. The ones that you really want to fight for, you fight for, and you stand your ground on that, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, there's value in that alone, especially as a solopreneur, saying, hey, I'm worth something, and you should pay me for that, and be okay if they say no, because they have backup options in which people are willing to do it for free. And there's nothing wrong with that either, Angela, you know?
So that sounds like a really, really good strategy for maybe finding national conferences.
Right.
What would you suggest for people who are really digging in the local soil? What would they do to find speaking?
So chambers of commerce are big. They tend to like to have only members who are current members speak, but you can still approach chambers of commerce. They generally never pay. But I built my list on chambers of commerce and doing those things. Local associations. So, for instance, I spoke for the National Association of Professional Organizers, the New England chapter, right? So there's a chapter in every part of the country for a lot of these organizations. And then there's Rotary. So Rotary is a civic organization. And Rotary is fantastic to get your chops wet at speaking. It's a 20-minute talk, and inside that 20 minutes is Q&A. So you can just build a talk around 12 to 15 minutes of time. And depending on the group, they'll have a projector or a screen or a TV or not. And so you can just go and not use slides at all and talk about your content. And it's not a sales pitch. They do not want a sale of any kind. However, with Rotary, there are people involved who are in the business community there, and they're there for the civic engagement, but they need speakers every single week. And so if you just go to the Rotary International website, look up your local district and look at all the chapters, they'll have a contact on their website where you can submit a form to be a speaker. Now, when you submit that form, you want to tell them what's in it for them, not why you want to do it, right? And when I first started speaking with my very, very first talk, I honed my talk at Rotary. Honed it. I mean, a 20-minute bit every time. I did 16 of them. And I just got the content out, I learned my talk that way. I found out where my jokes landed and where they didn't. And in Rotary, there's a lot of, sometimes there's retired folks there. They go for the civic engagement. And so they're not always engaged in your talk, which I think is good. And a lot of people would think, oh, that's not great. They're not listening to me. No, it's really good because it helps you as a speaker work with your audience and understand that people have different focus, they're focused on you or they're not focused on you. They're focused on their phone or they're not, or they're, sometimes you'll have a heckler, right? Like a comedy show. And so how do you deal with that? How do you deal with oddly set up rooms, right? Because Rotary is oftentimes at a restaurant or a hotel ballroom that's tight, something like that. And so you have to move around in those things. I've had people at Rotary get up in the middle of my talk and take a phone call, right in the middle of the room, talking on the phone as he walks out in front of me between everybody. And so how do I deal with that? Right. And so these things happen in these low stakes environments, and then you can go to the next level and you are experienced. Right. And so you really hone your chops at Rotary, and it's a fantastic organization. You give back. If you have a book, I have a book. Some people will buy your book at Rotary, so you make a little bit of money. You're going to make some lunch money, In my keynote talk, Angela, I call it a bread talk, right? So I talk about how I've never done a TED talk yet, but I have done a bread talk. And if you don't know what a bread talk is, a bread talk is when you go speak at Rotary and you get free bread for lunch. So they feed you, right? Sometimes it's breakfast or lunch or dinner, but they feed you. So, so locally, I mean, there's a lot of opportunity. I could go out right now, Angela, once we get off this this session here, I could go out and get booked for 15 Rotaries in like 2 hours. No problem. All I have to do is send the inquiries out because they need speakers every single week. And it's a great place to really hone your content.
So what I guess, in summary, what I'm really hearing you say that I think would be, there's a lot that you said would be very important for people, but I think this one point is, there's two actually points that I think sometimes, self-employed people may miss out on. A lot of people may not want to do the speaking because they just don't feel comfortable in front of groups. And I'm going to ask you to say a little bit about like the online speaking, the webinars and all of that. But the second thing that I hear you saying that I really want to make sure the audience takes home is that you keep talking about the numbers game. So I know a lot of people who will say, oh, I tried to, talk to various organizations in my industry so I can get my message out and I can sell more of whatever it is I'm selling. And they don't get those opportunities. So after, 5, 6 tries, you just say, forget it. And they go back to their little home office and they don't connect with people.
Right.
Say a little bit more about these numbers. And then do you have a different strategy for like webinars? Because there's plenty of people who would have no problem talking to a camera.
Right.
They just don't want to talk to a room of people.
Sure. So let me first address the numbers game. So the numbers game is very interesting. I think that most people give up way too early. Way too early. Like way too early. Like when they talk about 5 and 6 events, you're right. I hear it all the time. People are like, oh, I tried this industry, I tried the real estate industry and I can't get paid, or I can't get this gig. And I tried like 10 people. 10 people, like that is not enough, right? It's not enough of a test case. So I don't stop until I've talked to 100. And then at 100, I decide, is this market worth it for me? Right. So people, they're hearing no a lot, and they don't know why, right? They're just frustrated that they thought that this would be an ideal market and they're hearing no. And so they think it's not an ideal market, but no could mean lots of different things. No could be not at this time. No could mean not that topic. No could mean, well, you're not a member. No can mean so many different things, and it's up to you to figure out what that no actually means, right? And so a lot of times people go out with this idea that I'm going to speak and I'm going to get business. That's not what this is about. This is about speaking to give your content away. When you give your content away, the byproduct of that is that you get business, but it takes time. And so if you are playing the numbers game, you need a lot of reach outs to get the gigs. You need a lot of gigs to get the audience members. You need a lot of audience members to get the opt-ins. And it's the opt-ins that bring the business. So if you think you're going to do one event that has 50 people in it and you're going to make a sale, it's not going to happen. It might happen, but it's going to be the fairy tale land, right? That's not how this works. And so we send out 200 plus emails a week reaching out for events. That's 800 or more inquiries that we're trying to get into people's inboxes. Every single time, every week, we modify how we approach an industry or with a topic. We are always trying to find the angle that makes it about them, because it's not about me speaking. Yeah, I need to get paid to make a living doing this, but it is about the value that I can bring to their organization, their audience. The thing you have to remember is the person that hires you is going to get fired if you suck. Right?
Right.
So it's your job to ensure that the person that hired you does not get fired and looks like a hero. You cannot be the hero. Your client must be the hero every single time.
Okay.
If you take the stage with the fact that you're the greatest, this will not work, because the mirror is focused on you, and you need to hold the mirror up and flip it around and put it on them. It is, in fact, all about the audience and everything you do, whether it's one person or 100 or 1,000, right? So the numbers game matters. If you go back and you look at sales, anybody who's worth their salt in sales is going to tell you that sales is a numbers game, right? Andrea, I can't remember her last name at the moment, but she wrote a book, co-authored a book called Go for No, which was all about getting the no's so that you understand to get the yeses, right? And so we focus on getting 9 no's 90% of the time. Look, baseball players are great if they're hitting 400. That's 4 out of 10. 4 out of 10. And that doesn't even count the walks, right? So that's why you have to play the numbers game. That's why you have to send out as many inquiries as possible. And okay, you know, I've set it up in my business where I insulate myself from the no's as much as possible because it can hurt my ego. And so I have my assistant receive all the bounce backs from the emails and the responses, and then she handles where we go next. And so she sees all the no's.
Right.
And I don't see them because if I saw them, I would just keep getting discouraged. I'm like, oh, this is another no, another no. I just insulate myself. So insulate yourself. Now, the second question was, if you don't want to get on stage in front of a live audience and do this or do the Rotary thing for the bread talk, as I like to say, and you want to do the online stuff, there's a lot of opportunities. The first place you start is with podcasts. So not every podcast, but 90% of the podcasts out there are interview-based podcasts, and they don't pay, and you don't pay to get on them. And so you can get on them as a guest and put all of your thought leadership out there through an interview, whether it's on Zoom or on Skype. And then the person takes the recording, puts it up on the platform, and it's up there for like ever, as long as they pay for the hosting platform. And so, I mean, I think I've been a guest on probably 30 podcasts. And then I had my own co-hosted podcast for 2 years in which we brought on guests. And that's where we had Andrea on to talk about Go for No. And so you can easily get on that. Webinars. I've done webinars for organizations. So when I submit to speak at their event and they're like, oh, well, I don't know, but we have a webinar. Will you do that? Yeah, I'll do that. Because I want to show you the value I can give to your audience. And then I'll speak on stage. You don't have to go that route. You can just stop at the webinar, right? Webinars can be revenue generators for you. If you have the doc for people to download, then that's the opt-in. You want to make sure in advance, though, that you communicate with your host, your webinar host, what the agreement is in understanding of how you're going to get this doc, because you want to make sure that the people opt into your email list for that document. But super, super effective to get on them. And all you have to do is search the word webinar on Google in the industry that you're in. A lot of associations will do free webinars for their members, and very effective to be a guest on those.
Okay. Well, Matt, I'm telling you, this has really been fantastic. I've learned a lot, and I'm sure our viewers have also. As we wrap it up, any quick little tidbit you want to leave people with?
I do, Angela. It's as simple as this. I'm here today because I sent an email to Angela as part of our reach out process. And I think that people need to see the value in the effort that you put in as a person reaching out to other people to say, I would like to add value to your organization in some form or fashion. And Angela and I spoke on the phone for a half hour or 45 minutes, and we talked about a lot of different things. And we ended up saying, you know what? Why don't we get on the summit and talk about this? Because this is what people are not doing enough of. I'm passionate about helping small business owners improve their business through whatever means possible, but ideally it's through caring about other people. And to care about other people, you have to let them know that you exist. Don't be afraid to tell the world that you have a gift and that you want to share it.
All right. Matt, thank you so much. And viewers, stay tuned because we have more great content for you to help you start, scale, build a gig pyre, as I love to say. But we want you to be successful, and there is lots of strategies out there, and we have some excellent resources to share with you. So stay tuned. This is Angela Heath. Thanks for coming to the session. Bye.